Right now, there's a reason you're not achieving your biggest goals, and it has nothing to do with talent, luck, or how hard you're working. Scientists have discovered that 92% of people fail at their goals for one specific reason that nobody talks about. And in the next 90 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what that reason is. Plus, I'll share the embarrassing moment that taught me this lesson the hard way. My name is Much, and 3 years ago, I was completely stuck. I had a list of goals that kept growing, but I wasn't actually accomplishing any of them. I'd set a goal, work on it for a few weeks, then lose all motivation and give up. Sound familiar? But then something happened that changed everything. I discovered a systematic approach used by the world's top achievers that makes goal achievement almost automatic. And today, I'm breaking down the entire system step by step. But before we get to the system itself, you need to understand why your brain is secretly working against you right now. Here's what most people do wrong with goals. They set these massive targets, get excited for about 3 days, then reality hits. The motivation disappears, the goal sits there mocking them, and eventually they either give up or just keep spinning their wheels making zero progress. The problem isn't that you're lazy or undisciplined. The problem is that everything you've been taught about setting and achieving goals is completely backwards. Schools don't teach this, your parents probably didn't know it, and most self-help books get it totally wrong. Let me prove it to you. Think about a goal you set in the past that you failed to achieve. Maybe it was losing weight, starting a business, learning a new skill, or building better relationships. Now ask yourself, did you fail because you didn't know what to do? Probably not. You failed because knowing what to do and actually doing it consistently are two completely different things. And here's the deeper issue. Your brain is literally wired to resist the exact behaviors that would help you achieve your goals. Evolution programmed us to conserve energy, avoid discomfort, and stick with what's familiar. So every time you try to push yourself toward a big goal, you're fighting against millions of years of biological programming. Think of it like this. Your brain is like an old computer running on ancient software. The software was designed for a world where food was scarce, predators were everywhere, and any unnecessary movement could literally get you killed. So the software is constantly whispering, save energy, stay safe, don't try new things. But you're living in a modern world where the biggest threats aren't lions and starvation, they're missed opportunities and unrealized potential. Your brain's software hasn't updated for this new reality. It's still running the survival program from 10,000 years ago. This creates a massive conflict. Your conscious mind says, I want to achieve this goal. Your subconscious mind says, that sounds dangerous and exhausting, let's stay on the couch. And the subconscious mind almost always wins because it's way more powerful. But here's the good news. Once you understand how your brain actually works and what really drives human behavior, you can design a goal achievement system that works with your psychology instead of against it. You can essentially hack the ancient software and make it work for you instead of against you. And that's exactly what we're going to do. But first, I need to tell you about the single biggest mistake that kills goals before they even start. This mistake is so common that you've probably made it yourself without even realizing it, and once you understand it, you'll never look at goal setting the same way again. Let me start by showing you the fundamental mistake that kills most goals before they even have a chance. It's something called the expectation-reality gap, and understanding this one concept will completely change how you approach goals. Here's how it works. When you set a goal, you have certain expectations about what the journey will be like. Maybe you expect it to be exciting and rewarding. Maybe you expect to see progress quickly. Maybe you expect that once you get started, you'll naturally feel motivated to keep going. But then reality hits, and reality is almost always harder, slower, and more frustrating than you expected. This gap between your expectations and reality creates disappointment, and disappointment kills motivation faster than anything else. Think about New Year's resolutions. January 1st, everyone's pumped up and ready to transform their lives. They expect that this time will be different. But by February, the gyms are empty again. Why? Because reality didn't match expectations. People expected working out to feel good and see results fast. Reality was that it hurt, progress was slow, and they had to drag themselves to the gym every single day. Let me share a personal story that really drove this home for me. Back in college, I decided I was going to learn to play piano. I'd always loved music, and I had this romantic vision of myself sitting at a piano, playing beautiful songs, impressing people at parties. I could see it so clearly in my mind. So I bought a keyboard, downloaded some lessons, and got started. And for the first week, I was excited. I was learning the basics, making progress, feeling good about myself. But then, week 2 hit, and suddenly it wasn't fun anymore. My fingers hurt, the songs I wanted to play were way too advanced, and the basic exercises were boring and repetitive. I'd practice for 20 minutes and feel like I hadn't learned anything. My expectation was that learning piano would feel like making music. The reality was that it felt like doing math homework. I expected to be playing songs I loved within a few weeks. The reality was that I was still struggling with scales after a month. And here's the embarrassing part. I quit. I told myself I was too busy, that maybe piano wasn't really my thing, that I'd come back to it later when I had more time. But the truth was that the gap between my expectations and reality was so huge that I couldn't handle it. I felt like a failure, and I carried that feeling with me for years. Every time I saw someone playing piano, I'd think, that could have been me if I wasn't such a quitter. But here's what I didn't understand at the time. The problem wasn't that I was a quitter. The problem was that my expectations were completely unrealistic, and nobody had prepared me for what the actual journey would look like. If someone had told me, learning piano is going to suck for the first 6 months, your fingers will hurt, you'll sound terrible, and you won't be able to play any real songs for a long time, I might have stuck with it. Because then, reality would have matched my expectations. I wouldn't have been disappointed. This is the key insight. The solution isn't to lower your expectations about the end goal. The solution is to set accurate expectations about the journey to that goal. You need to know exactly what the journey will actually look like, including all the difficult parts. Because when reality matches your expectations, there's no disappointment. And without disappointment, your motivation stays intact. So, the first step in our goal achievement system is getting brutally honest about what achieving your goal will actually require. And I mean brutally honest, not the Instagram version where everything looks easy and perfect, the real version with all the setbacks, frustrations, and moments where you want to quit. Here's a practical way to do this. Find 3 people who've already achieved the goal you're working toward, not influencers who make it look easy, real people, and ask them this question. What was the hardest part that nobody talks about? You'll hear things like, I failed 17 times before anything worked, or I spent 6 months feeling like I was making 0 progress, or I almost quit every single week for the first year. This is the reality. This is what you need to expect, because when these hard moments come for you, and they will, you won't be surprised. You'll think, oh yeah, this is exactly what they said would happen. This is normal. I just need to keep going. The expectation-reality gap is like quicksand. The more you struggle against it, the deeper you sink. But when you know it's there and you've prepared for it, you can walk right through it. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but how do I stay motivated when I know it's going to be hard? And that's a great question, because it leads us directly to the next critical insight. There's a type of fuel that actually gets stronger when things get difficult, and most people have no idea it exists. But before I tell you what it is, I need to explain why the fuel you're currently using is sabotaging you. Let's talk about the second major mistake people make. They set goals that sound impressive, but don't actually align with what they really want deep down, and your brain can tell the difference. I'm going to share something with you that most productivity experts completely ignore. There are 2 fundamentally different types of motivation. One is weak and unreliable, the other is incredibly powerful and sustainable, and most people are running on the weak kind without even realizing it. The weak kind is called extrinsic motivation. This is when you're motivated by external rewards like money, status, praise, or avoiding punishment. Extrinsic motivation can get you started, but it doesn't last. Here's why. Your brain releases dopamine when you anticipate a reward. That dopamine gives you energy and focus, but once you actually get the reward, the dopamine drops. The motivation disappears. Think about getting a promotion at work. You're excited for a few days, maybe a couple weeks. Then it becomes normal and you're back to feeling the same way you did before. This is why chasing money or status or other people's approval never leads to lasting fulfillment. You get the thing, feel good briefly, then need another hit of external validation to feel motivated again. It's an endless treadmill. And here's what makes it even worse. The more you achieve through extrinsic motivation, the higher your baseline becomes. The first time you make $1,000, it feels amazing. The 10th time, it barely registers. You need 10,000 to get the same feeling, then 100,000, then 1,000,000. It's like a drug addiction. You need bigger and bigger doses to get the same high, and eventually, no amount is enough. I learned this the hard way. For years, I was obsessed with hitting certain income milestones. I'd set a target, work like crazy to hit it, celebrate for about 5 minutes, then immediately set a higher target. It was exhausting. And the weird part was that even when I was hitting my goals, I wasn't happy. I'd make the money, buy the thing I thought I wanted, and feel empty. Like, is this it? Is this what I've been working so hard for? I remember one specific moment that really shook me. I just landed a huge client, the biggest deal I'd ever closed. I was pumped. I called my mom to tell her. I posted about it on social media. I felt on top of the world. 3 days later, I was miserable again. Back to grinding, back to stressing, back to feeling like I wasn't doing enough. The high had completely worn off, and I realized I was trapped in a cycle that would never end. That's when I discovered the second type of motivation, the powerful kind. It's called intrinsic motivation. This is when you're motivated by internal factors like curiosity, enjoyment of the activity itself, personal growth, and a sense of purpose. And here's the game-changing part. Intrinsic motivation doesn't fade after you achieve something. It actually compounds over time. Let me give you an example. Imagine two people learning guitar. Person A wants to learn because they think it'll make them look cool and impress people at parties. Person B wants to learn because they genuinely love music and are curious about how to create it. Person A might practice for a few weeks, show off their basic skills, get some compliments, and then lose interest. Person B will keep practicing for years, constantly improving because the activity itself is rewarding. They're not doing it for external validation, they're doing it because they love it. And here's what's fascinating. Person B will almost certainly become much better than Person A, not because they're more talented, but because they'll put in way more hours, and they'll enjoy those hours. Person A is forcing themselves to practice. Person B can't wait to practice. This is the difference between running on extrinsic fuel versus intrinsic fuel. One is a grind that eventually breaks you. The other is a flow that carries you forward effortlessly. Now here's what's crucial for goal setting. Your goals need to be driven by intrinsic motivation, not extrinsic motivation. If you're setting a goal primarily for external reasons, you're setting yourself up to fail. The motivation will run out the moment things get difficult. So, how do you know if a goal is intrinsically or extrinsically motivated? Ask yourself this question. If you achieved this goal and nobody ever knew about it, would you still want it? If the answer is no, that's a red flag. It means you're chasing external validation, not something you genuinely care about. Here's another test. Imagine you're working on your goal, making progress, but it's going to take 10 years to achieve it. And during those 10 years, nobody will see your work or know what you're doing. Are you still excited about it? Or does that sound terrible? If it sounds terrible, you're probably running on extrinsic fuel, because extrinsic fuel needs regular hits of external validation to keep going. Without the likes, the compliments, the visible progress, it runs out. But if you're genuinely excited about spending 10 years working on something just for the sake of the work itself, that's intrinsic fuel. That's the kind that lasts. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I do care about money and success and recognition. Does that mean all my goals are wrong? No, external rewards aren't bad. The problem is when they're the primary driver, when they're the only reason you're doing something. The sweet spot is when you have both. You're intrinsically motivated by the work itself, and there happen to be external rewards that come as a byproduct, but you do the work even without the external rewards. Think about the best athletes in the world. Yes, they make a lot of money. Yes, they get fame and recognition, but that's not why they do it. They do it because they love the sport. They love the competition. They love pushing their limits. The money and fame are nice bonuses, but they're not the core motivation. The core motivation is intrinsic. So, here's your homework. Look at your current goals. For each one, ask yourself honestly, am I doing this because I genuinely care about it? Or am I doing it because I think I should, or because it'll impress people, or because I want the external rewards? Be brutally honest. Because if you're running on the wrong fuel, you need to know now before you waste months or years grinding towards something that will leave you empty even if you achieve it. And if you discover that your goals are primarily extrinsically motivated, don't panic. It just means you need to either reframe the goal to connect with intrinsic motivators or pick a different goal entirely, one that actually lights you up from the inside. Now, I'm going to show you a framework that will help you design goals that tap into the most powerful intrinsic motivators. This framework is based on cutting-edge research into what actually drives human behavior and peak performance. And once you understand these 5 core motivators, you'll be able to engineer motivation that basically runs on autopilot. But first, let me tell you about one time I completely ignored this framework and it almost destroyed everything I'd built. Let me get really practical here. I'm going to walk you through a framework for setting goals that are powered by intrinsic motivation. This framework is based on research into what actually drives human behavior and high performance. There are 5 core intrinsic motivators, and the more of these you can build into your goals, the more sustainable your motivation will be. These are curiosity, mastery, autonomy, purpose, and autotelicity. Before I break each one down, I need to tell you a story about what happens when you ignore these motivators, because I learned this lesson the expensive way. About 4 years ago, I was running a business that looked successful from the outside. Good revenue, growing team, clients were happy. But I was completely burnt out. I'd wake up every morning with this heavy feeling in my chest, like I was carrying a weight I couldn't put down. I kept telling myself it was just stress, that once we hit the next revenue milestone, I'd feel better. But deep down, I knew something was really wrong. One day, I was sitting at my desk, staring at my computer, and I couldn't make myself do anything. Not because I was tired, but because I literally could not find any reason to care. It all felt pointless. That scared me, because I'd worked so hard to build this business, and now that I had it, I hated it. I felt trapped. I ended up taking a week off and just thinking about what was wrong. And I realized that my business scored really low on most of the intrinsic motivators. I'd built it around what I thought would make money, not around what I actually cared about. I wasn't curious about the work anymore. I'd figured out the formula and was just repeating it. There was no mastery to pursue because I'd already mastered what we were doing. I had no autonomy because clients and employees were constantly demanding my time. The purpose felt hollow because I didn't really believe in what we were selling, and the daily activities felt like pulling teeth. I was running on pure extrinsic motivation, money and status, and it had finally run out. So I made a hard decision. I restructured the entire business, fired some clients, changed what we offered, built it around things I was genuinely curious about and wanted to master, things that felt purposeful to me. Revenue actually dropped at first, but my energy came back. I started waking up excited again, and within a year, we'd surpassed our old revenue with half the effort because I actually cared about the work. That experience taught me that these 5 intrinsic motivators aren't optional. If your goals don't align with them, you'll burn out. It's just a matter of time. So, let me break down each motivator and show you how to build them into your goals. Curiosity is your desire to learn and understand something. When you're genuinely curious about a topic or skill, you'll naturally want to explore it. You'll read about it, practice it, and think about it even when you don't have to. Curiosity creates a self-sustaining loop of engagement. For your goals to tap into curiosity, they need to involve learning something new or deepening your understanding of something that fascinates you. If your goal feels like pure drudgery with nothing interesting to discover, you're going to struggle. Here's a test. When you're working on your goal, do you find yourself going down rabbit holes, looking up related topics just because they're interesting? Staying up late reading about it even though you don't have to? If yes, your curiosity motivator is engaged. If no, you need to find a way to connect your goal to something that genuinely fascinates you. For example, maybe your goal is to get in shape. If you approach it as, I need to exercise and eat healthy, that's pretty boring. But if you approach it as, I want to understand how the human body works and experiment with optimizing my biology, suddenly it becomes interesting. You're not just going through the motions, you're learning and discovering. Mastery is the drive to get better at something. Humans are wired to enjoy improvement. We like seeing progress. We like developing competence. This is why video games are so addictive. They give constant feedback on your improvement. For your goals to leverage mastery, you need clear metrics that show you're getting better over time. And you need challenges that are right at the edge of your current ability. Too easy and you get bored. Too hard and you get frustrated. Right at the edge is where mastery feels most rewarding. Think about learning a language. If you're just memorizing random words, it's boring. But if you're tracking how many words you know and challenging yourself with slightly harder conversations each week, you can feel yourself getting better. That feeling of improvement is addictive. The key is to make progress visible and regular. You want to feel like you're leveling up constantly. Even if the improvements are small, as long as you can see them, your mastery motivator stays engaged. Autonomy is the feeling of being in control. You get to decide what you work on, how you work on it, and when you work on it. When you feel like someone else is forcing you to do something, motivation plummets. When you feel like it's your choice, motivation soars. For your goals to have autonomy, you need to own them completely. They can't be goals that someone else wants for you. They can't be goals you're pursuing just because you think you should. They have to be goals you've chosen for yourself. Here's a simple test. If someone told you that you couldn't pursue your goal anymore, would you feel relieved or disappointed? If relieved, it's not really your goal. It's someone else's goal that you've adopted. If disappointed, it's truly yours. Autonomy also means having control over the process. Even if the end goal is set, can you choose how to get there? Can you experiment with different approaches? Can you work on your schedule? The more control you have, the more autonomy you feel, and the more autonomy you feel, the more motivated you'll be. Purpose is the belief that what you're doing matters beyond yourself. It's connecting your actions to something bigger. People who have a strong sense of purpose are willing to work harder and persist longer because they believe their efforts are meaningful. For your goals to have purpose, connect them to how they'll impact others or contribute to something you care deeply about. Pure self-interest isn't usually enough to sustain long-term motivation. You need to see how your goal fits into a larger story. For example, maybe your goal is to build a business. If you frame it as, I want to make money for myself, that's pretty limited. But if you frame it as, I want to create jobs for people in my community, or I want to solve a problem that millions of people struggle with, suddenly it has purpose. The purpose doesn't have to be saving the world. It just has to connect to something beyond your immediate self-interest, even if it's helping your family or contributing to your local community. Purpose is what keeps you going when things get hard, because even when you're tired and frustrated, you remember that it's not just about you. You're doing this for something bigger. Autotelicity is the most important one and the hardest to pronounce. It means enjoying the activity for its own sake, not just for the outcome. When something is autotelic, you do it because you love doing it, not because of what it gets you. For your goals to be autotelic, the journey needs to be inherently rewarding, not just the destination. If you hate every step of the process and you're only enduring it to get to the end result, you're going to burn out. Think about it like this. Imagine someone offers you $10 million, but to get it, you have to spend the next year doing something you absolutely hate every single day. Would you do it? Some people would say yes. But here's the thing. Those people would be miserable for that entire year, and when they finally got the money, they'd realize they'd traded a year of their life for it. That's a terrible trade. But if someone said, spend the next year doing something you love and you'll also happen to make $10 million, you'd jump at it because the year itself would be rewarding and the money would just be a bonus. That's the difference. Autotelic goals make the journey itself rewarding. You do it even without the end result because the doing is the point. Now here's the critical insight that most people miss. You don't need all 5 motivators to be at maximum level, but you need at least 3 or 4 to be reasonably high, and you absolutely cannot have all 5 at 0. So here's what I want you to do. Take your current goal and rate it on each of these 5 motivators on a scale of 1 to 10. Curiosity. How fascinated are you by the learning and discovery involved? 1 is, I couldn't care less about learning this, and 10 is, I'm obsessed with understanding this deeper. Mastery. How much room is there for continuous improvement? 1 is, there's no skill to develop, it's just repetitive, and 10 is, I could spend a lifetime getting better at this. Autonomy. How much control do you have over the what, how, and when? 1 is, someone else is dictating everything, and 10 is, I have complete freedom to do this my way. Purpose. How much does this matter beyond yourself? 1 is, this is purely selfish, and 10 is, this could positively impact thousands of people or contribute to something I deeply care about. Autotelicity. How much do you enjoy the actual day-to-day activities? 1 is, I hate every minute of it, and 10 is, I lose track of time because I'm so into it. Add up your scores. If your total is below 25 out of 50, your goal is in danger. You're going to struggle to stay motivated long term. If your total is between 25 and 35, it's decent, but could be better. Look at which motivators are lowest and see if you can reframe the goal or change your approach to boost those. If your total is above 35, you're in good shape. Your goal aligns well with intrinsic motivation and you have a real shot at sustaining the effort needed to achieve it. But here's the thing, these scores can change over time. Maybe you start a goal and curiosity is high because it's new and interesting, but after 6 months, you've learned everything and curiosity drops. That's when you need to either find new aspects to be curious about or shift to a related goal that reignites your curiosity. The key is to keep monitoring these motivators and adjusting before your motivation completely runs out. Now, you might be wondering how actually to use these motivators on a practical day-to-day routine, because understanding them intellectually is one thing, but building them into your daily routine is another, and that's where most people get stuck. They know what they should do, but they don't actually do it. So let me show you the exact system that makes doing it automatic. But before I do, you need to understand why willpower is a trap and what to use instead. Now let's talk about the actual mechanics of goal achievement. Because even if you have a goal that's intrinsically motivating, you still need a system to make consistent progress. And this is where most people completely wing it and hope for the best. The research on goal achievement is very clear. People who use systematic approaches are exponentially more likely to succeed than people who just try to stay motivated through willpower. So I'm going to give you a proven system that works. First, you need to understand the psychology of behavior change. Every action you take is influenced by what researchers call the 3 components of behavior. These are motivation, ability, and prompts. Motivation is how much you want to do something. Ability is how easy or hard it is to do, and prompts are the cues that trigger you to take action. For a behavior to happen, you need all 3 at the same moment: high motivation, high ability, and a prompt. Think of it like lighting a fire. You need fuel, which is motivation, you need oxygen, which is ability, making it possible, and you need a spark, which is the prompt. Without all 3, no fire. Most people focus only on motivation. They try to pump themselves up and get excited. They watch motivational videos, listen to podcasts, read inspiring quotes. And all of that is fine, but motivation fluctuates wildly. Some days you wake up fired up and ready to conquer the world. Other days you can barely drag yourself out of bed. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes based on how much sleep you got, what you ate, what's happening in your life, even the weather. So if you're relying on motivation alone, your behavior will be wildly inconsistent. You'll work hard when motivation is high and do nothing when motivation is low. And this inconsistency destroys progress. The smarter approach is to make the behavior as easy as possible, regardless of your motivation level. Because when something is easy, you'll do it even when motivation is low. And when something is hard, even high motivation isn't enough. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're standing at the bottom of a mountain. Your goal is at the top. You have two paths to choose from. Path 1 is steep and rocky. It's technically the shortest distance to the summit, but it requires constant effort, perfect conditions, and incredible motivation to keep climbing. One rainstorm, one injury, one moment of doubt, and you're stuck. Path 2 is a gentle, winding trail. It's longer in terms of distance, but it's so easy to walk that you can do it even when you're tired, when it's raining, when you're not feeling motivated. You just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Which path do you think gets more people to the top? Path 2, every single time, because the hard path requires everything to go right. The easy path works even when things go wrong. This is the principle of minimum viable action. You design the smallest possible version of your desired behavior, something so easy that you can do it even on your worst day, and you commit to doing that tiny version every single day. Let me give you an example. Let's say your goal is to exercise regularly. If you make exercise really difficult by requiring yourself to drive to a gym, change clothes, work out for an hour, shower, and drive back, you'll only do it when motivation is extremely high. And high motivation doesn't last. But if you make exercise ridiculously easy by just doing 10 push-ups in your living room, you'll do it even when motivation is low, because 10 push-ups takes 2 minutes. You don't need special equipment, you don't need to go anywhere, there's basically no barrier. And here's the magic. Once you start with 10 push-ups, you'll often do more, because starting is the hardest part. The psychological resistance to beginning is way bigger than the resistance to continuing once you've started. I discovered this accidentally a few years ago. I wanted to start meditating, but I kept failing. I'd set a goal to meditate for 20 minutes every morning, and I'd do it for a few days, then miss a day, then feel guilty, then give up. One day, I was talking to a friend about it, and she said something that changed everything. She said, "What if you just committed to one breath?" I laughed. "One breath? That's not even meditation." She said, "Doesn't matter. Just commit to sitting down and taking one conscious breath. That's it." So I tried it. The next morning, I sat down and took one slow, deep breath. That was my entire commitment. And you know what happened? I took another breath, and another. Before I knew it, 5 minutes had passed. The barrier wasn't the meditation itself. The barrier was starting. And by making the starting threshold absurdly low, I removed the barrier. I kept this up for weeks. Some days I'd do one breath and stop. Most days I'd do much more, but I never felt guilty because I always hit my minimum commitment. Eventually, meditation became a solid habit. Now I meditate for 20 to 30 minutes most days, but I still maintain the one breath minimum because I know that's what makes it sustainable. So for every goal you set, identify the minimum viable action. What's the smallest step you could take every single day that would move you toward your goal? Make it so small that it's almost embarrassing. Then commit to doing it no matter what. If your goal is to write a book, your minimum viable action might be writing one sentence. If your goal is to learn a language, it might be reviewing 3 flashcards. If your goal is to build a business, it might be sending one email to a potential customer. The key is consistency, not intensity. Doing something small every single day will get you exponentially further than doing something big occasionally. Because consistency builds habits, and habits are what actually determine your life outcomes. Here's a visual metaphor that really drives this home. Think of your goal like filling a swimming pool with water. You have two options. Option 1, once a month you dump 10,000 gallons of water into the pool all at once. It makes a huge splash. It looks impressive. But between dumps, the water evaporates. By the end of the month, the pool is nearly empty again. You're back to square one. Every single day, you add 50 gallons of water to the pool. It's not dramatic. Nobody watching would be impressed, but the water doesn't have time to evaporate because you're constantly adding to it. After a month, the pool is full. After a year, it's overflowing. Consistency beats intensity every single time because consistency compounds. Intensity doesn't. Now let's talk about the prompt component. Remember, a behavior happens when motivation and ability are high enough and there's a prompt to trigger the action. Most people leave prompts to chance. They just hope they'll remember to do the thing. But successful people design their prompts intentionally. They create environmental cues that automatically trigger the behavior. This is called implementation intentions in psychology research, and it's one of the most powerful goal achievement strategies ever discovered. Here's how it works. You decide in advance exactly when and where you'll do your minimum viable action. Not just, I'll exercise sometime this week, but I'll do 10 push-ups in my bedroom immediately after I brush my teeth in the morning. This creates a mental link between an existing behavior and your new behavior. Every time you finish brushing your teeth, your brain automatically thinks about push-ups. You don't have to rely on remembering or feeling motivated. The prompt is built into your routine. Studies show that people who use implementation intentions are 2 to 3 times more likely to follow through on their goals compared to people who just set goals without specific plans. It's a massive difference, and it's completely free. You just have to be specific about when and where. So, for your minimum viable action, create an implementation intention. Write down exactly when and where you'll do it. Make it specific. After I do X, I will do Y in location Z. The more specific, the more automatic it becomes. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will write one sentence on my laptop at the kitchen table. Or, after I park my car at work, I will review 3 language flashcards on my phone before I get out. The existing behavior becomes the trigger. You don't have to think about it or remember it. It just happens automatically as part of your routine. Now here's where it gets really interesting. There's a concept in neuroscience called neuroplasticity. This is your brain's ability to rewire itself based on repeated behaviors. Every time you do something, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with that behavior, and the stronger those pathways get, the more automatic the behavior becomes. This is why habits feel effortless once they're established. Your brain has built superhighways for that behavior. You don't have to think about it or force yourself. It just happens. But building those neural pathways takes time and repetition. Research suggests it takes anywhere from 18 to 254 days for a behavior to become automatic, depending on the complexity. The average is about 66 days. This means you need to commit to your minimum viable action for at least 2 months before expecting it to feel easy. And during those 2 months, you're going to have days where you don't feel like doing it. That's normal, that's expected, but you do it anyway because you're building the neural pathway. Think of it like walking through a forest. The first time you walk a particular route, you have to push through brush and step over logs. It's slow and difficult. But every time you walk that route, it gets a little easier. Eventually, you've worn a clear path. Now you can walk it with your eyes closed. Your brain works the same way. The first 50 times you do a behavior, it takes conscious effort. But after that, you've worn the neural pathway. It becomes automatic. And here's a critical insight. Missing 1 day isn't the problem. The problem is missing 2 days in a row, because that creates a pattern. 1 missed day is a blip. 2 missed days is the beginning of a new habit, the habit of not doing the thing. So, if you miss a day, don't beat yourself up. Don't fall into the guilt spiral. Just make absolutely sure you do it the next day. Get right back on track immediately. This is called the never miss twice rule, and it's a simple way to prevent temporary setbacks from becoming permanent failures. Now I know what you're thinking. This all sounds great in theory, But what about when real life gets in the way? What about when I'm traveling or sick or dealing with a crisis? And that's exactly what we need to talk about next. Because the difference between people who achieve their goals and people who don't isn't that successful people face fewer obstacles. It's that they have a completely different approach to handling them. And I'm about to show you exactly what that approach is. Let's talk about tracking. You need a way to measure your progress, because what gets measured gets managed, and seeing progress is one of the most powerful motivators for continuing. The simplest tracking method is a habit tracker. This is just a calendar where you mark an X every day you complete your minimum viable action. Over time, you build a chain of X's, and you don't want to break the chain. There's something psychologically satisfying about seeing that visual representation of consistency. It makes the invisible visible. You can literally see yourself becoming the type of person who follows through. I'll be honest with you. I used to think habit trackers were silly. Like, why do I need to mark an X on a calendar? I'm an adult. I can just remember whether I did something or not. But then I actually tried it, and I was shocked at how powerful it was. There was something about seeing that chain of X's growing day by day that hooked me. On days when motivation was low, I'd look at the chain and think, I've done this 23 days in a row. I'm not going to break my streak now. The chain became its own source of motivation. It was visual proof that I was the type of person who follows through, and I didn't want to lose that identity. I remember one day specifically. I was exhausted. I'd had a terrible day at work. All I wanted to do was collapse on the couch and zone out. But then I remembered I hadn't done my minimum viable action yet. I looked at my habit tracker. 27 days in a row. A perfect month, almost complete. And I thought, I can do 2 minutes. I can keep this alive. So I did it. And you know what? Those 2 minutes turned into 20 minutes. Because once I started, I got into it. But even if it had stayed at 2 minutes, it would have been worth it, because I kept the chain alive. That's the power of tracking. It turns an abstract concept like consistency into something concrete that you can see and protect. You can use a physical calendar on your wall or a digital app. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you're tracking every single day, and you're being honest with yourself. Don't mark an X unless you actually did the thing. Lying on your habit tracker is like lying to yourself. It feels good in the moment, but it completely defeats the purpose. The tracker only works if it's an accurate representation of your behavior. Now, tracking isn't just about motivation. It's also about data. Over time, your habit tracker will reveal patterns that you wouldn't notice otherwise. Maybe you'll see that you never miss on weekdays, but you always miss on Sundays. That tells you something. Maybe Sunday is too unstructured and you need a better prompt. Or maybe you're exhausted by Sunday and you need to adjust your routine earlier in the week. Maybe you'll notice that you're perfect for 3 weeks and then you miss 3 days in a row. That might indicate a pattern where you burn yourself out and then crash. Maybe you need to reduce intensity to maintain consistency. The data is valuable. It helps you optimize your approach over time. You're not just blindly following a plan, you're experimenting, collecting data, and adjusting. This is the scientific approach to goal achievement. Form a hypothesis about what will work, test it, collect data, analyze results, adjust hypothesis, repeat. Most people set a goal, try one approach, and if it doesn't work, they either keep doing the same thing, hoping for different results, or they give up completely. Neither of those is smart. The smart approach is to treat everything as an experiment. If something doesn't work, that's not failure, that's data. You learned something. Now you can try a different approach informed by what you learned. I want to share something vulnerable with you. I've failed at way more goals than I've achieved. Like, it's not even close. For every goal I've successfully accomplished, there are probably 10 that I started and abandoned. And for a long time, I felt like a failure because of this. I'd look at people who seemed to achieve everything they set out to do and think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I be like them? But then I realized something. Those people failed at tons of goals too. They just don't talk about it. They only show you the successes. And more importantly, I realized that my failures weren't actually failures. They were experiments that taught me what didn't work. Every abandoned goal taught me something about myself. I learned that I'm not intrinsically motivated by status or money. I learned that I need high curiosity or I get bored. I learned that I need some autonomy or I feel suffocated. I learned that I need to see clear progress or I lose confidence. All of those lessons came from goals I didn't achieve, and those lessons helped me design goals I could achieve. So if you failed at goals in the past, don't see yourself as a failure. See yourself as someone who's been collecting data. You now know more about what doesn't work for you, and that's valuable information. The key is to actually learn from the failures. Don't just repeat the same mistakes. After every abandoned goal, do a retrospective. What happened? Why did I lose motivation? What was missing? What would I do differently next time? Write down your answers. This creates a knowledge base that you can reference when setting future goals. You're building wisdom through experience. Now, let's talk about something that's going to happen to you. You're going to hit plateaus, periods where you're putting in the work but you're not seeing results. And plateaus are where most people quit. Here's what you need to understand. Plateaus are normal. They're actually a sign that you're about to make a breakthrough. But they don't feel like that when you're in them. They feel like you're failing. There's a concept called the plateau of latent potential. Imagine an ice cube sitting in a room. The temperature is 25 degrees. You start heating the room. 26 degrees, 27, 28. The ice cube doesn't change at all. Still solid ice. You keep heating. 29, 30, 31. Still solid ice. Nothing's happening. You might think this isn't working. The ice isn't melting. But then you hit 32 degrees and suddenly the ice starts melting. All that heat you added from 25 to 31 wasn't wasted. It was building latent potential. And once you crossed the threshold, the change happened all at once. Goals work the same way. You might work for months seeing no visible results, but you're building latent potential. You're laying the foundation. And then suddenly, seemingly overnight, everything clicks. Results start pouring in. This is why consistency through the plateau is so critical. If you quit at 31 degrees, you never see the ice melt. You were 1 degree away from the breakthrough. But if you trust the process and keep going, you hit the threshold, and all that invisible progress suddenly becomes visible. I experienced this firsthand with content creation. I posted videos consistently for 8 months and got almost no views, maybe a few hundred per video. It was discouraging. I kept thinking, maybe I'm just not good at this. Maybe I should quit. But I committed to posting once a week for a year no matter what. So I kept going even though I wanted to quit. Month 9, something shifted. One video took off, then another. Within 2 months, I'd gone from a few hundred views per video to tens of thousands. It felt like overnight success, but it wasn't overnight. It was 8 months of building latent potential, learning the craft, understanding the audience, improving the quality. All of that was invisible progress, and then it hit a threshold and became visible. If I'd quit at month 7, I would have missed it. I was right on the edge of the breakthrough. So when you hit a plateau, and you will, remember the ice cube. You're building latent potential. Keep adding heat. The breakthrough is coming. Now, here's a strategy for staying motivated during plateaus. Focus on input metrics instead of output metrics. Output metrics are results, views, sales, weight loss, whatever the end goal is. Input metrics are behaviors. Did you do the thing today? Yes? Then today was a success. That's it. The outputs will come eventually. But right now, in this moment, all that matters is whether or not you're following the process. This shift in focus does something powerful to your psychology. It gives you back a sense of control. You're not at the mercy of external factors. You're in control of your actions, and that control breeds confidence. Now, let me ask you something. When you hit that inevitable plateau, when you're 3 months in and you're not seeing the results you expected, what's going to keep you going? Is it willpower? Is it discipline? Or is it something deeper? Because what I'm about to share with you is the secret that separates people who push through plateaus from people who quit. And it has nothing to do with being tougher or more disciplined than everyone else.
Now I want to talk about the concept of identity-based goals. This is a game changer that most people completely miss. Most people set outcome-based goals. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to make $100,000. I want to run a marathon. These are fine, but they're not the most powerful type of goal. Identity-based goals are different. Instead of focusing on what you want to achieve, you focus on who you want to become. You ask, what type of person do I want to be? For example, instead of, I want to lose 20 pounds, you'd say, I want to become the type of person who takes care of their body. Instead of, I want to make $100,000, you'd say, I want to become the type of person who creates value and solves problems. Why is this more powerful? Because your actions flow from your identity. If you see yourself as a healthy person, you'll naturally make healthy choices. You don't have to force yourself to eat vegetables. Healthy people eat vegetables. That's just what they do. But if you don't see yourself as a healthy person, even when you're trying to lose weight, you're fighting against your identity. You're trying to act like someone you're not. And that takes constant willpower. When you shift your identity first, the behaviors become natural expressions of who you are. You're not faking it or forcing it. You're just being yourself. Let me tell you about a moment that completely changed how I understand this. I was at a dinner party and someone offered me dessert. I'd been trying to eat healthier, so I said, "No thanks, I'm trying to cut back on sugar." The person smiled and said, "Just one won't hurt," and kept pushing. And I felt this internal struggle. Part of me wanted the dessert. Part of me was trying to stick to my goal. It was uncomfortable. Then I heard someone else at the party decline dessert, but they said something different. They said, "No thanks, I don't eat sugar." Did you catch the difference? I said, "I'm trying to cut back." They said, "I don't eat sugar." One is an action, the other is an identity. When you say, "I'm trying," you're implying that it's hard and you might fail. You're fighting against your natural inclination. But when you say, "I don't do that," you're stating your identity. You're not tempted because that's not who you are. I started experimenting with this. Instead of, "I'm trying to exercise more," I started saying, "I'm someone who works out." Instead of, "I'm trying to be more consistent," I started saying, "I'm someone who follows through." And I noticed something weird. When I framed things as identity rather than as goals, the behavior became easier. I wasn't trying to do something, I was just being myself. So how do you change your identity? Through small, consistent actions that prove to yourself that you're the type of person you want to be. Every time you do your minimum viable action, you're casting a vote for your new identity. You're proving to yourself, I'm the type of person who follows through. The more votes you cast, the stronger that identity becomes. Eventually, the identity solidifies. You don't have to think about it anymore. It's just who you are. And once that happens, achievement becomes almost effortless. You're not trying to achieve goals. You're just being yourself. And achievement naturally flows from that. Think of it like this. Right now, you probably brush your teeth every day without thinking about it. You don't need motivation, you don't need willpower, you just do it because that's what you do. You're the type of person who brushes their teeth. That behavior is so ingrained in your identity that not doing it would feel weird. Like, if you went to bed without brushing your teeth, you'd feel uncomfortable. Something would be off. That's the level of automatic you want your goal-related behaviors to become. Not forced, not requiring motivation, just natural expressions of who you are. And you build that through repetition. Every day you do the behavior, you strengthen the identity. Every day you skip it, you weaken the identity. It's like voting in an election. Each action is a vote, and the identity with the most votes wins. Here's what's really powerful about this. When you focus on identity instead of outcomes, you stop being attached to specific results. You're not chasing a number on a scale or a dollar amount in your bank account. You're just being the type of person that would naturally achieve those things. And paradoxically, this makes you more likely to achieve them because you're not stressed about results. You're just showing up as your authentic self, and results flow from that, naturally. Let me give you a practical framework for building identity. It has 3 steps. Step 1. Decide what type of person you want to become. Be specific, not just successful or healthy. What does that actually mean? What does that person do on a daily basis? Step 2. Prove it to yourself through small wins. You can't just declare a new identity and expect your brain to believe it. You have to earn it through evidence.
So do small things that the type of person you want to be would do and consciously acknowledge each one as evidence. For example, if you want to become a writer, write one sentence and then tell yourself, I'm a writer. That's what I just did. I wrote. That's evidence. It sounds silly, but it works. You're training your brain to associate the behavior with the identity. Step 3, let go of actions that contradict your desired identity. If you want to be healthy but you're eating junk food every night, those actions are voting for a different identity. They're evidence that you're not the person you want to be. You don't have to be perfect, but you need more votes for the desired identity than against them. So start reducing the contradictory behaviors while increasing the supportive ones. Over time, usually a few months of consistent action, the identity becomes real. It shifts from something you're trying to be to something you are. And once that shift happens, everything changes. You're not fighting yourself anymore. You're not using willpower to force behaviors. You're just being yourself. And being yourself happens to align with achieving your goals. Now I know what you're thinking. This all sounds great, but how do I actually make this work in the real world, where I'm constantly busy, constantly distracted, and constantly getting knocked off track? And that's exactly what we need to address next, because the environment you're operating in has a massive impact on whether you succeed or fail. And most people are trying to achieve goals in environments that are actively working against them. Let's talk about the power of environment design. Your environment has a massive influence on your behavior, and most people try to overcome a bad environment with willpower. That doesn't work. Willpower is a limited resource, but your environment is always there, constantly influencing you. So instead of fighting your environment, design it to support your goals. If your goal is to eat healthy, make healthy food the easiest option. Stock your fridge with vegetables, remove junk food from your house. When the easy option is the healthy option, you'll default to it. If your goal is to read more, put books everywhere, on your nightstand, in your living room, in your bathroom. Make books the most accessible form of entertainment. Remove the TV remote or make it harder to access streaming services. The idea is to make desired behaviors easy and undesired behaviors hard. Increase friction for bad habits, decrease friction for good habits. Think about friction like this. Imagine you're trying to push a heavy box across the floor. If the floor is smooth hardwood, you can slide the box with minimal effort. But if the floor is covered in thick carpet or sand, that same box becomes incredibly hard to move. The box hasn't changed, your strength hasn't changed, but the friction has. And friction determines how much effort is required. Your behaviors work the same way. If there's low friction, you'll do them easily and consistently. If there's high friction, even simple tasks become difficult. So your job is to design your environment to have low friction for good behaviors and high friction for bad behaviors. Let me give you a real example from my own life. I wanted to practice guitar more consistently, but my guitar was in its case in the closet. So every time I wanted to practice, I had to go to the closet, pull out the case, open it, take out the guitar, tune it, and then finally play. That's a lot of friction. And because of that friction, I'd often think, I'll practice later, and then never do it. So I made one simple change. I bought a guitar stand and put the guitar in the middle of my living room. Now it's the first thing I see when I walk in the door, and if I want to play, I just pick it up. Zero friction. That one change took my practice from once or twice a week to almost every day. Not because my motivation increased, but because the friction decreased. You can apply this to any behavior. Want to exercise more? Put your workout clothes next to your bed so they're the first thing you see in the morning. Want to drink more water? Put a full water bottle on your desk. Want to journal? Leave your journal open on your pillow. The lower the friction, the more likely you are to do it. Now, let's talk about increasing friction for bad habits. This is just as important, but people often overlook it. If you're trying to eat less junk food, get it out of your house. Don't rely on willpower to resist the cookies in your pantry. Just don't have cookies in your pantry. Increase the friction by making it so you'd have to drive to the store to get cookies. Most of the time when you want cookies, you're not willing to drive to the store. The friction is too high, so you don't eat the cookies and you didn't have to use any willpower. The environment made the decision for you. If you're trying to waste less time on your phone, Delete the apps that suck you in, or put your phone in another room when you're working, or use app blockers. Increase the friction so that mindless scrolling becomes harder than just staying focused on your work. The goal is to make good choices the path of least resistance, because humans are fundamentally lazy. We gravitate toward the easiest option. So make the easiest option the one that serves your goals. You can also design your environment to trigger desired behaviors. This is about strategic placement of cues. For example, I wanted to take vitamins every morning, but I kept forgetting. So I put the vitamin bottle right next to my coffee maker. Now, every morning when I make coffee, I see the vitamins. They're impossible to miss. That visual cue triggers the behavior. You can do this with anything. Want to read before bed? Put a book on your pillow so you have to move it to get in bed. Want to meditate in the morning? Put your meditation cushion in the middle of your bathroom so you see it when you brush your teeth. The environment becomes a system of prompts that automatically guide you toward your goals. You're not relying on memory or motivation. The environment is doing the work for you. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This feels like I'm tricking myself. Shouldn't I just have the discipline to do things without needing to manipulate my environment? Here's the truth. Discipline is great, but it's unreliable. Some days you have it, some days you don't. Environment design doesn't rely on discipline. It works whether you feel disciplined or not. Also, every successful person uses environment design. Athletes have coaches and training facilities designed to optimize performance. CEOs have assistants who manage their schedule and environment. Writers rent cabins in the woods to remove distractions. Nobody succeeds through pure willpower alone. Everyone uses systems and environment to support their goals. You're not cheating by doing this. You're being smart. Let me share something personal. For years, I struggled with distraction while working. I'd sit down to focus, and within 5 minutes, I'd be checking email or scrolling social media. I felt like I had no self-control. I tried everything: meditation, time blocking, willpower. Nothing worked consistently. Then I did something drastic. I removed all distracting apps from my phone and computer. I set up website blockers. I put my phone in another room during work hours. And suddenly, distraction wasn't a problem anymore. Not because I got more disciplined, but because I removed the option to be distracted. The friction was too high. At first, it felt restrictive, like I was putting myself in prison. But then I realized I'd actually given myself freedom. Freedom from the constant pull of distraction. Freedom to focus deeply on work I cared about. That's the paradox of environment design. Constraints create freedom. By limiting your options, you free yourself from decision fatigue and temptation. Now, environment design isn't just about physical objects and spaces. It's also about people. The people you spend time with have an enormous impact on your behavior and goals. If you're surrounded by people who are pursuing similar goals, you'll naturally rise to that level. If you're surrounded by people who have no ambition and criticize anyone who tries to improve, you'll get pulled down. This is called social proof. We unconsciously model the behaviors of people around us. If everyone around you exercises regularly, you'll feel social pressure to exercise too. If everyone around you is lazy and makes excuses, you'll absorb that mindset. So part of environment design is choosing your social environment carefully. Spend more time with people who are where you want to be. Spend less time with people who drag you down. This doesn't mean you have to cut off all your friends, but it does mean being strategic about who you spend your time and energy with, especially during periods when you're trying to build new habits and achieve big goals. Join communities of people pursuing similar goals. Find an accountability partner. Hire a coach. Put yourself in environments where the behavior you want is the norm, not the exception. When the behavior you want is what everyone around you is doing, it stops feeling like effort. It becomes the default. And that's when real change happens. Now, you might be wondering, what happens when life gets chaotic? When you're traveling or sick or dealing with a crisis and your carefully designed environment falls apart? That's when most people quit. But I'm about to show you a strategy that not only keeps you going during chaos, but actually uses the chaos to make you stronger. But first, you need to understand why your current approach to obstacles is completely backwards. Now let's address the elephant in the room. What about when things get hard? What about when you face obstacles and setbacks? Because this is where most people quit. Here's what you need to understand. Obstacles aren't a sign that you should give up. Obstacles are a normal part of any worthwhile goal. In fact, if you're not facing obstacles, your goal probably isn't challenging enough to create real growth. The difference between people who achieve their goals and people who don't isn't that successful people face fewer obstacles. It's that successful people have a different relationship with obstacles. They expect them, they plan for them, and they have strategies for overcoming them. There's a psychological technique called mental contrasting that's been proven to improve goal achievement. Here's how it works. You visualize achieving your goal and how amazing that will feel. But then, instead of just staying in that positive visualization, you immediately shift to visualizing the obstacles that will get in your way. This creates a mental contrast between where you want to be and the challenges you'll face getting there. And this contrast triggers something in your brain called problem-solving mode. You start automatically thinking about strategies to overcome those obstacles. Research shows that people who use mental contrasting are significantly more likely to achieve their goals than people who only do positive visualization, because positive visualization alone can actually backfire. It makes your brain think you've already achieved the goal, which reduces motivation to actually work toward it. But when you visualize both the success and the obstacles, your brain stays engaged with the reality of the situation. You're neither overly optimistic nor pessimistic. You're realistic and prepared. So here's what I want you to do. For your goal, spend 5 minutes visualizing the obstacles you'll likely face. What will make it hard to stay consistent? What external circumstances might get in the way? What internal resistance will you feel? Write down every obstacle you can think of. Then, for each obstacle, write down a specific strategy for how you'll handle it. This is called if-then planning. If obstacle X happens, then I will do Y. For example, if your obstacle is, I'll be too tired after work to exercise, your if-then plan might be, if I'm too tired after work, then I'll do my minimum viable action of 10 push-ups instead of a full workout. If your obstacle is, I'll feel discouraged if I don't see results fast enough, your if-then plan might be, if I feel discouraged, then I'll review my habit tracker and remind myself that consistency matters more than quick results. Having these pre-planned responses dramatically increases your ability to navigate obstacles without quitting, because you've already decided what to do. You don't have to make a decision in the moment when you're tired or frustrated. You just execute the plan. Let me tell you about a time when this saved me. I was working on a big project with a 6-month deadline. About 3 months in, I hit a massive obstacle. A key person on my team quit unexpectedly. Suddenly, I had to do twice as much work with the same deadline. My first reaction was panic, then anger, then the thought, maybe I should just give up. This is impossible now. But I'd done mental contrasting at the beginning of the project. One of the obstacles I'd anticipated was, what if I lose a team member? And my if-then plan was, if I lose a team member, then I will immediately simplify the scope of the project to what I can realistically do alone and communicate the new timeline to stakeholders. So that's what I did. I didn't panic, I didn't quit, I just executed the plan I'd already made. I simplified the project, adjusted the timeline, and kept going. Did the final result look exactly like my original vision? No, but I completed the project and it was successful. And I only managed to do that because I'd anticipated obstacles and planned for them in advance. Most people don't do this. They assume everything will go smoothly, and when obstacles hit, they're caught off guard. They haven't thought about how to handle it, so they either make poor decisions in the moment or they give up. Don't be most people. Anticipate obstacles, plan for them, and when they show up, you'll be ready. Now let's talk about a specific type of obstacle that derails almost everyone. The plateau. This is when you're putting in the work but you're not seeing results, and plateaus are psychological killers. I already mentioned the concept of latent potential, the idea that progress is building invisibly before it becomes visible, but I want to go deeper on this because it's so important. There's a story I love about a Chinese bamboo tree. When you plant a Chinese bamboo seed, you water it and care for it every day, and for the first year, nothing happens, no growth above ground at all, just a seed in dirt. Year 2, same thing. You keep watering, keep caring, and still nothing visible. Year 3, year 4, still nothing. Then in year 5, the bamboo tree shoots up 90 feet in 6 weeks. 90 feet in 6 weeks. Now, did the growth happen in year 5, or did it happen over the entire 5 years? The answer is it happened over the entire 5 years. During those first 4 years, the tree was growing an extensive root system underground, building the foundation to support the massive growth that would come later. But to someone just looking at the surface, it would seem like nothing was happening for 4 years. They might think, this tree's never going to grow. I'm wasting my time watering this. And if they stopped watering in year 4, they'd never see the bamboo shoot up. They'd quit right before the breakthrough. Your goals are like the bamboo tree. The first months or even years might look like nothing is happening, but underground, beneath the surface, you're building the foundation. You're developing skills, building connections, learning lessons that will support your future success.
And if you keep watering, keep showing up, you'll hit a tipping point where everything suddenly explodes. All that invisible progress becomes visible all at once. But you have to trust the process during the invisible years. You have to keep watering the bamboo even when you can't see anything happening. This is where tracking becomes crucial again, because even when you can't see results, you can see that you're showing up. You can see the chain of X's on your habit tracker. That's proof that progress is happening even if it's not visible yet. Focus on what you can control. You can't control when the breakthrough comes, but you can control whether you show up today. And if you control what you can control, the breakthrough will come eventually. Now, let me talk about failure, because you're going to fail, a lot. And how you respond to failure will determine whether you eventually succeed. Most people see failure as evidence that they're not capable. They fail at something and think, I guess I'm just not good at this, and they quit. But successful people see failure completely differently. They see failure as feedback. Every failure teaches them something. It shows them what doesn't work, and that information helps them adjust their approach. Thomas Edison famously said he didn't fail 10,000 times inventing the light bulb. He just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. That's the mindset you need. When you fail, ask yourself 3 questions. What happened? Why did it happen? What will I do differently next time? These questions turn failure into learning. And here's the key. You have to actually implement what you learned. Failing and learning doesn't help if you just make the same mistakes again. You have to change your behavior based on the feedback. Also, fail fast and fail small. Don't wait until you've invested months or years before testing whether something works. Test your assumptions early. Make small bets. Get feedback quickly and adjust before you've wasted too much time or resources. This is called the scientific method. Form a hypothesis, run an experiment, collect data, analyze results, adjust hypothesis, repeat. Every goal should be approached like a series of experiments. You're not trying to get it perfect the first time. You're trying to learn as quickly as possible what works and what doesn't, and then you iterate based on that learning. This removes the emotional weight from failure. It's not personal, it's just data. The experiment didn't produce the result you expected. Okay, what did you learn? What will you try next? When you treat goals like experiments, failure becomes interesting instead of devastating. You're genuinely curious about what will happen. And when something doesn't work, you think, interesting. I didn't expect that. Let me try a different approach. This is so much healthier than the normal approach, where failure feels like a personal deficiency, where you think, I failed, therefore I'm a failure. No, you ran an experiment, the experiment produced data, you're a scientist collecting information. And scientists don't quit after one failed experiment. They run hundreds of experiments until they find what works. That's the mindset you need. Curiosity and persistence. Not attachment to being right or looking good, just genuine interest in finding what works. And here's the beautiful thing about this approach. When you finally do succeed, you'll know exactly why, because you've tested different variables and found the winning combination. You're not just lucky. You understand the mechanics of your success, and that means you can replicate it. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about expectation-reality gaps, intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, the 5 core motivators, minimum viable actions, implementation intentions, habit tracking, identity-based goals, environment design, and the scientific approach to obstacles and failure.
But here's what ties all of this together. There's one thing that makes the difference between people who use all these strategies and still quit versus people who use them and achieve extraordinary things. And it's not what you think. It's not discipline or talent or willpower. It's something much simpler and much more powerful. And I'm about to reveal exactly what it is. Let me talk about something that's really important but often overlooked: energy management. This is something that's criminally underrated in goal achievement. People focus so much on time management and productivity hacks, but they ignore the fact that your energy levels determine how effectively you can actually work. You can have all the time in the world, but if your energy is depleted, you won't get anything done, or you'll do it poorly. Energy is the real currency of achievement, not time. There are 4 types of energy you need to manage: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And if any of these are running low, your performance suffers. Physical energy comes from sleep, nutrition, and exercise. This is the foundation. If you're not sleeping enough, eating well, and moving your body, everything else falls apart. You can't think clearly, you can't regulate emotions, you can't sustain effort. Most people sacrifice sleep and health to work more, and they wonder why they're not making progress. It's because they're running on empty. You need to protect your physical energy like your life depends on it, because your goals definitely depend on it. I learned this the hard way. A few years ago, I was in this phase where I thought sleep was for the weak. I was sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night, working 12 to 14-hour days, eating whatever was convenient, barely exercising. And for a while, I felt like a machine. I was getting so much done. I was proud of how hard I was working. But then, I crashed. Hard. I got sick and was bedridden for a week. And when I recovered, I realized I'd burned myself out completely. I had no energy, no motivation. I felt like a zombie. It took months to recover, and during that time, I got almost nothing done. So all that extra work I'd done by sacrificing sleep, I lost it all during the burnout recovery. Net result: negative. If I just slept properly and taken care of my health, I would have accomplished more in the long run, even if I would have been working fewer hours per day. This is the paradox of energy management. Sometimes doing less allows you to achieve more because you're working from a full tank instead of running on fumes. So, prioritize sleep, 7 to 9 hours for most people. Prioritize nutrition, real food that actually fuels your body. Prioritize movement. Even just walking or light exercise makes a huge difference. These aren't luxuries, they're necessities. If you want to achieve your goals, you need the physical energy to do the work. Emotional energy comes from relationships, joy, and stress management. If you're constantly stressed, anxious, or emotionally drained from toxic relationships, you won't have the energy to pursue your goals. You need to actively manage your emotional state. This means setting boundaries with people who drain you. It means doing things that genuinely make you happy, not just scrolling social media. It means processing your emotions instead of suppressing them. I'll be honest, I used to think emotional management was soft and unnecessary. I thought you should just push through and not let emotions affect you. But I was wrong. Emotions affect everything. When you're emotionally drained, your decision-making suffers, your creativity suffers, your ability to persist through challenges suffers. So now, I actively protect my emotional energy. I say no to people in situations that drain me. I spend time with people who energize me. I do things that bring me genuine joy, and I process difficult emotions instead of bottling them up. This has made a massive difference in my ability to show up consistently for my goals. Mental energy comes from focus and cognitive capacity. Your brain can only handle so much mental effort before it needs to rest. This is why you feel fried after a day of deep work. You need to protect your mental energy by eliminating distractions, taking breaks, and not trying to multitask. Every time you switch tasks, you lose mental energy. Every notification you respond to depletes your cognitive resources. Batch similar tasks together. Create distraction-free work blocks and build in rest periods where your brain can recharge. I use a technique called the Pomodoro method. 25 minutes of focused work, then a 5-minute break. After 4 cycles, a longer break.
This prevents mental fatigue and keeps me sharp. Without these breaks, I'd burn out my mental energy by noon and be useless for the rest of the day. But with strategic rest, I can maintain high-quality focus for much longer. Spiritual energy comes from purpose and meaning. This is your why. Why does your goal matter to you? If you don't have a compelling reason, you'll run out of steam when things get hard. You need to regularly reconnect with your purpose. Remind yourself why you're doing this. Visualize the impact achieving this goal will have on you. How will it improve your life? How will it help the people you care about? How will it contribute to something bigger than yourself? This weekly practice keeps me connected to my purpose, and when I'm having a rough week, I go back and read what I wrote. It reminds me that the struggle is worth it. When you manage all 4 types of energy, you show up to your work fully resourced. You have the capacity to do your best, and that's when real progress happens. But most people only focus on time. They think, I just need more hours in the day. But that's not the issue. The issue is energy. If you managed your energy better, you'd accomplish more in less time. So start paying attention to your energy levels. When are you most energized during the day? That's when you should do your most important work. When are you depleted? That's when you should do low-energy tasks or rest. Work with your natural rhythms instead of against them. This simple shift can dramatically improve your output without working more hours. Now, here's something that's going to sound counterintuitive. You need to schedule rest. Not as an afterthought when you're burned out, but as a regular, non-negotiable part of your schedule. High performers don't rest when they're tired. They rest before they're tired. They build recovery into their routines so they never hit the point of burnout. This is called oscillation, periods of intense effort followed by periods of rest, and it's how elite performers in every field operate. You can't sprint forever. You need to sprint, then recover, then sprint again. This pattern is sustainable. Constant sprinting is not. So build rest days into your week. Take vacations. Have evenings where you completely disconnect from work. This isn't being lazy. This is being strategic about your energy. And here's what's wild. When you rest properly, you often come back with better ideas and more energy than if you just pushed through. Rest isn't time wasted, it's time invested in your future performance. Now, let me ask you something. If you could only work 4 hours a day on your goal, what would you focus on? What would you cut? This is actually a brilliant thought experiment because it forces you to identify what really matters versus what's just busy work. And that's exactly what we need to talk about next, because most people waste enormous amounts of time and energy on things that don't actually move the needle. And I'm about to show you how to cut through all of that and focus only on what matters.
Here's something nobody tells you about achieving big goals. You're going to have to say no to a lot of things. Every yes to one thing is a no to something else. And if you're saying yes to everything, you're spreading yourself too thin to make real progress on anything. This is called the paradox of choice. More options feel like freedom, but they actually lead to worse outcomes because you can't focus. You end up dabbling in 10 things instead of mastering one. Successful people are ruthless about saying no. They protect their time and energy for the few things that really matter. Everything else gets cut. So you need to get comfortable with saying no. No to opportunities that don't align with your goals. No to social events that drain your energy. No to projects that sound interesting but would distract from your priorities. Every time you say no to something that doesn't serve your goals, you're saying yes to your goals. You're creating space for what matters. And that space is where achievement happens. Let me tell you about a decision I made that completely changed my trajectory. About 2 years ago, I was working on a big project that I really cared about. It was going well, but it required a lot of focus and time. Then I got offered another opportunity. It was exciting, good money, high visibility, everything that sounds appealing. Old me would have said yes immediately. I would have tried to do both, and I would have done both poorly. But I'd learned my lesson, so I said no. The person offering was shocked. They said, "Are you sure? This is a really good opportunity." And I said, "I know, but I'm focused on something else right now, And if I take this, I won't be able to give either project the attention it deserves. It was hard to say no. Part of me worried I was making a mistake. What if this was my only chance at this opportunity? But I stuck with my decision. And you know what happened? The project I was focused on succeeded beyond my expectations because I gave it my full attention instead of splitting my focus. And 6 months later, a similar opportunity came around, but by then, I was ready for it. I could say yes without compromising my other priorities. This taught me that opportunities aren't scarce. There will always be more opportunities, but your time and energy are scarce, so protect them fiercely. Now, saying no is hard, especially to people you care about or opportunities that sound appealing. So here's a framework that makes it easier. Before you say yes to anything, ask yourself these 3 questions. 1. Does this align with my current goals and priorities? If no, it's an automatic decline. 2. Do I have the time and energy to do this well without sacrificing something more important? If no, decline. 3. Will future me be glad I said yes to this? Sometimes things seem appealing in the moment, but you know you'll regret them later. Listen to future you. If the answer to all 3 questions is yes, then consider it. If any answer is no, decline. This framework removes the emotional weight from decisions. You're not being mean or selfish by saying no, you're being strategic about your resources. And here's a script you can use to decline gracefully. I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm focused on other priorities right now and can't give this the attention it deserves. Short, honest, respectful. Most people will understand, and the ones who don't weren't respecting your time anyway. Now let's talk about opportunity cost. This is the value of what you're giving up when you choose one thing over another. Every hour you spend on one activity is an hour you can't spend on something else. So you need to constantly ask yourself, is this the best use of my time right now? Most people never ask this question. They just do whatever's in front of them or whatever feels urgent. But urgent isn't the same as important. There's a concept called the Eisenhower matrix. It divides tasks into 4 categories. Important and urgent, do these immediately. Important but not urgent, schedule these. Urgent but not important, delegate or minimize these. Neither urgent nor important, eliminate these. Most people spend their time on urgent but not important tasks, responding to emails, putting out fires, handling other people's requests. But the tasks that actually move you toward your goals are usually important but not urgent. Things like planning, skill development, relationship building, strategic thinking. These don't have immediate deadlines, so they're easy to postpone, but they're the activities that compound into massive results over time. So you need to protect time for important but not urgent tasks. Schedule them, treat them as non-negotiable, because they're the work that actually matters. And ruthlessly eliminate tasks that are neither urgent nor important. Stop scrolling social media mindlessly. Stop watching TV shows you don't even enjoy. Stop attending meetings that accomplish nothing. All of that is dead time. It's not serving any purpose. It's just filling space. When you eliminate the waste and focus on what matters, you'll be shocked at how much time you actually have. There's a principle called Pareto's Law. 20% of your actions produce 80% of your results. Most of what you do doesn't matter much, but a few key activities are massively important. Identify the 20%, the activities that actually move the needle, and spend as much time as possible on those. Minimize or eliminate everything else. This might mean saying no to good opportunities so you can say yes to great ones. It might mean delegating or outsourcing tasks that aren't in your zone of genius. It might mean cutting activities that feel productive but don't actually create results. Be strategic about where you invest your limited time and energy, because those are your most precious resources. Now, I know some of you are thinking, but what if I miss out on something important by being too focused? And that's a valid concern. You don't want to be so narrow that you miss opportunities. But here's the thing. Broad focus is a beginner strategy. When you're starting out and you don't know what works yet, it makes sense to try different things.
But once you know what works, once you've found your path, narrow focus is how you accelerate. You go deep instead of wide. You master one thing instead of being mediocre at 10 things. So early on, explore. Try different approaches. See what resonates. But once you find something that works and aligns with your goals, commit to it fully. Say no to distractions and go deep. That's how you achieve extraordinary results, not by doing everything, but by doing the right thing consistently over a long period of time. And the beautiful part? When you achieve extraordinary results in one area, doors open in other areas. You don't miss out on opportunities by being focused. You actually create more opportunities because people notice your mastery. So trust the process of focus. It might feel like you're narrowing your options, but you're actually expanding your potential. Now I want to share something with you that most people never figure out. There's a way to achieve goals that doesn't feel like grinding or sacrifice, where the work itself becomes the reward, where you're not suffering towards some distant finish line, but actually enjoying the journey. And it all comes down to understanding something called autotelicity that I mentioned earlier. But I'm going to show you exactly how to engineer this state in your daily life, because once you crack this code, everything changes.
Here's the thing nobody tells you about achieving goals. The moment you actually achieve the goal isn't usually the best part. The best part is who you become in the process. When you commit to a goal and follow through with consistent action over months or years, you transform as a person. You prove to yourself that you can do hard things. You build self-trust. You develop skills and discipline that serve you in every area of life. The goal itself is almost arbitrary. The real value is in the journey, in the person you become by showing up every day and doing the work. I think about all the goals I've achieved over the years, and honestly, the achievement moment is usually pretty anticlimactic. You hit the milestone, feel good for a few hours or days, and then life goes back to normal. But the person I became by pursuing those goals, that's permanent. The confidence I built, the skills I developed, the resilience I gained, that stays with me forever. So yes, achieve your goals, but don't get so fixated on the destination that you miss the transformation happening along the way. That transformation is the real prize. Every day that you show up and do your minimum viable action, you're becoming the type of person who follows through. You're building an identity of someone who doesn't quit when things get hard, someone who's reliable and consistent. And that identity is more valuable than any external achievement. Because once you have that identity, you can achieve anything. You're not limited by self-doubt or fear of failure. You know that if you commit to something, you'll find a way to make it happen. That's true power. Not the power to achieve one specific goal, but the power to achieve any goal you set. And the beautiful thing is that this power builds over time. Every goal you achieve makes the next one easier because you have more evidence that you can do hard things, more proof that you're capable. So think of your current goal as training. You're not just working toward a specific outcome. You're training yourself to be the type of person who achieves goals. And once you've trained yourself that way, there's no limit to what you can do. Let me bring this all together. Achieving your goals isn't about motivation or talent or luck. It's about understanding psychology and building systems. You need goals driven by intrinsic motivation, not just external rewards. You need to set accurate expectations about the journey so reality doesn't disappoint you. You need to make the behavior as easy as possible through minimum viable actions. You need implementation intentions to trigger the behavior automatically. You need to track your progress and celebrate small wins. You need to manage your energy, not just your time. You need to embrace failure as feedback and keep experimenting. You need accountability. You need to focus on process over outcomes. You need to build an environment that supports your goals. You need to say no to distractions and protect your focus. You need to shift your identity so the behaviors become natural expressions of who you are. And most importantly, you need to trust the process and keep showing up even when you can't see progress, because progress is happening beneath the surface. The bamboo tree is growing its roots. This isn't complicated, but it does require commitment. It requires showing up consistently even when you don't feel like it. It requires being honest with yourself about what's working and what's not. It requires patience to let the compound growth do its thing. But if you do these things, if you build the system and follow it, achieving your goals becomes inevitable. Not easy, but inevitable. You don't need to be extraordinary, you just need to be consistent. And consistency, over time, creates extraordinary results. So pick your goal. Make sure it aligns with your intrinsic motivators. Design your minimum viable action. Create your implementation intention. Build your environment. Start tracking. Manage your energy. Say no to distractions. Build your accountability. And just keep showing up. The results will come. Not overnight, not even in a few weeks, but they will come. And when they do, you'll realize the goal itself was never the point. The point was becoming the type of person who achieves goals. Because once you're that person, there's no limit to what you can accomplish. You're not just achieving one goal, you're building a skill that you'll use for the rest of your life. The skill of turning dreams into reality through consistent, intelligent action. That's the real transformation, and that's what makes all of this worth it.